Hey, it's me, Cavlar, and this is a devlog. Yes, multiplayer is a thing now, but I'll get to that later in the video. The first thing that I added to my epic lizard game since the last devlog was that I slightly reduced the bloom because of this very angry comment that really affected my mental health and self-esteem. I also added Discord rich presence to my game, which pretty much shows what level you're playing on to everyone on Discord. I'll also make it show the difficulty you're playing on so everyone in my Discord knows that I suck at my own game. A Discord that you should totally join. Just look at all the entertaining and fun and interesting conversations that take place there. Anyway, the next thing I did was change the player's hit color to make it more obvious when an enemy hurts you. Because before you had this, and when I let people play it, they were confused as to why they weren't taking any damage. And when I told them they had health, they were surprised. I also added this upside down arrow thingy that flips your gravity. I did this because I want a ton of things for people to place in custom levels to increase how creative people can be, because I want this to be a really huge focus for my game. I'll also add things like this to the campaign levels when I can be asked, because making levels is really boring. But to make it less boring, I recently made it much easier with this chunk of code. It allows me to turn level editor levels into Unity scenes by pressing one button. This is really useful as making levels with Unity takes ages. So that makes level creation less boring, but do you know what's really boring? The fact that 93% of people that watched my last video aren't actually subscribed. Anyway, I also added these smaller variants of the spikes. I haven't placed them in many levels yet, but I did put them in the level editor because, as I said before, I need more things like collectibles and block types to make the game slightly less miserable, instead of just having bricks and spikes and enemies, which is pretty much the entire game at the moment. The health of the player is now different depending on the difficulty. You have 4 on easy, 3 on normal, and 1 on hard. Yeah, I just keep making the hardest difficulty even harder so that I can make as many people suffer with this game as is humanly possible. The reason why the difference between easy and normal is so slim is because there are many other things that make easy, well, easy. The turrets now do different damage on every difficulty, and they don't one-shot you on easy anymore. So pretty much everything is kind of balanced for each difficulty now. I mean, I keep telling myself that, and then I look at my fucking to-do list. I redid level 14 again, this time using the level editor because of my new code that I mentioned earlier. As I said before, it means it's a lot easier to make levels. Maybe that's a bad thing because I got away with only making like 2 levels in the last devlog, so now I'm gonna have to make more. Otherwise my videos are just gonna be me replaying the same 14 levels until I'm about to release the game and realize there's barely anything to even release. So I also made levels 15 and 16. This guy said that I should add health potions, and since there's no health bar at the moment, it doesn't seem to do much. But trust me, it does give you some health. I mean, you'll never know, and I could be lying to you. Also, it doesn't get consumed unless your health is less than the max. So if you don't need it, you won't accidentally grab it. To save a bit of performance, particles are now only spawned if they are close to the camera. This should hopefully allow you to reach a solid 1 frame per second on the lowest graphics. You're very welcome. I've changed the menu quite a bit, but the most important thing I changed was how the camera moves. Basically, before it would follow this piss color box that you select the level with, but that made it quite difficult when selecting with a mouse cursor, because all the buttons would be moving as you tried to click them. So I made the camera still, but it moves down when the selector is nearly off screen, so the camera doesn't move quite as much, only when it needs to. You can now use the scroll wheel to switch weapons, and menu sliders now work with the cursor. In the level select, you can now see the hardest difficulty that you've completed each level on. Basically, the levels just turn different colors. Green if you beat it on easy, orange if you beat it on normal, and red if you beat it on hard. So now you can prove that you're better than all your friends. I mean, if you're playing this game, you probably don't have any, but I also made it so that it wouldn't count you as completing a level on a certain difficulty if you die on it. Yes, there was a bug where if you switched to hard and killed yourself, the game would think that you completed the level in hard, which is a bit counterintuitive. The level editor now looks fucking sick. Kind of. It's definitely better than the old shitty look that I had before. There's a little box that shows which object you have selected, and the objects change size when you hover over them. Also, the bot place preview moves quickly between positions instead of just snapping, which makes it look almost as smooth as my brain. I also added an SP, which stands for spawn point or start position. Basically, you can place this anywhere in your custom level, and when you start the game, you will teleport to it, so you can test different parts of the level really easily. I also reorganized the objects in the level editor so they look a bit better, and I still have a ton of room for more. Also in the level editor, you don't place the actual enemy, block, and spikes prefab until you hit P to test it. It just places these sprites, which multiplies your frame rate by 8. If you had 7 or 8 FPS before, you now have a smooth 60. This is just an example, by the way. Unless your PC is a fucking potato fry, you shouldn't be getting 7 frames per second in my game. I hope. I reworked the save system a bit. Now you can choose the name of your save or load an existing one instead. You also have a list of saves you created in the bottom right. Also, the file extension for these files is .lizard, because why not? The final thing I'm going to mention before I start rambling about multiplayer is that enemy lizards now jump over spikes instead of walking into them. Here's an obstacle course I made to demonstrate how good their AI is now. I've also put enemies avoid spikes in midair on my to-do list, but I'm kind of scared that these enemies are either going to get too good at the game or become sentient and take over the world. To be honest, either one is fine by me. By the way, have you liked and subscribed yet? Okay, onto multiplayer. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. Pretty much, 2D platformers can be really fun, but as my uncle once told me, there's only so much fun you can have by playing with yourself. So instead of just having the main campaign, I'm imagining an entire network where you can create and share levels. I'll make a ton more block types and objects and completely rework the level editor to allow the community to be as creative and as free as possible. You'll be able to create private or public game rooms with any of these levels and choose from a ton of different modes like a race to the finish, a battle royale, and an arena mode like the Hypixel Armpit, where you can level up and unlock more powerful things to bully new players with, except hopefully not so imbalanced. There'll be experience and stats and everything like that. And if you guys have any suggestions for improvements that I can make, I'm all ears and I read every single comment. So seriously, just send me any thoughts you have about anything. To make multiplayer, I got a bit of help from this guy on YouTube. If you didn't know, Tom Whelan's tutorials are actually what Danny used to base his multiplayer system off of for Carlson. Unfortunately, my brain is actually half the size of the average for my species and I couldn't get it to work when I followed those tutorials. However, Tom uploaded some new tutorials recently where he basically does most of the code for you on GitHub in a sick little package called Riptide Networking. From there, you just need to watch the first video of his tutorials, pretend to listen to the first half of the second one, and then just do the rest yourself, which is what I tried to do, but I ran into a few problems. Anyway, I finally got it working, but what did I do from there? Well, the first step was to add player movement. In Tom's tutorial, the player sends a button input to the server and then moves where the server tells them to do. This is dumb, as there's a lot of delay between inputs. However, it does make it impossible to cheat by speeding up the game, attempting to teleport, or doing any other shenanigans. But instead of that, I'm just going to set the player position on the server to the one on the client that controls that player. Later, I will add a proper anti-cheat, but for now the player can hack without punishment, which is why the player is the same color as Dream. I added some smoothing to the movement to interpolate a bit between position updates, so it's way smoother and the player doesn't just teleport. I then allowed the player to shoot fireballs, and the fireball movement is handled by the server, so you can't just spawn fireballs inside an enemy, no matter how hilarious that would be. I'm also handling the fireball collision server side, and it destroys the fireball on all clients as well as the server when hitting walls, because usually when things hit walls, they explode. I also added camera movement to the server so the owner, aka me, can spy on people. I fixed a ton of issues with the fireballs because they were laggy as shit before and it made them look really bad and impossible to tell exactly where the fireball actually is. I tweaked the interpolation so many times and now it looks pretty damn good. To help with the look of the fireball, I'm also sending the rotation and velocity of the fireball to all of the clients, so on the client it sort of predicts where the fireball is about to go. And by the time the next fireball position message reaches the client, they're at about the same position, so I just need to interpolate to where the next one is going and so on. You can also shoot different fireballs now, and by different fireballs I mean 2, because the other ones will take a bit more work. Adding predictions for the homing fireball will be difficult, and for the shotgun it needs to spawn 3 fireballs instead of 1. I also managed to get server-side collisions working, so if the player on the server touches a fireball or spike, it will kill you on all clients. Fireballs now don't hit the player that shot them, because that would be quite a stupid feature to leave in my game. There's also a server-side health system now, and different weapons now do different damage. For now you have a lot more health than you do in single player, because I don't want the fights to be like Minecraft but everyone has sharpness 12,004. If everyone had 3 health, then you would get one shot by the normal fireball. The different fireball textures are now updated on the client, and I fixed a bug where the inventory UI had a high chance of not doing anything when in multiplayer. I spent a few more years tweaking the fireball and player interpolation, and now it actually looks quite good. I added the death exclamations that we all know and love, and I fixed a few more bugs like fireballs going through spikes, death particles being spawned twice, the water fireball not damaging players, the fireball death particles being the wrong color, and the fireballs colliding with the player that shot them. Again, I thought I fixed that. I added damage feedback, which is pretty cool, and I fixed a bug where players could hack and pretend to be other players. Finally, hackers can no longer shoot if they're dead, I think. I haven't tested it yet, but I'll get to it. In theory, it should work. Anyway, I'll talk more about multiplayer in the next devlog, but if I'm going to be honest, most of it's quite boring at the moment, since right now I'm just fixing a ton of bugs and I'm still setting up some basic systems. But once I'm finished with the boring stuff, I can start getting to work on things like different game modes and sharing levels online. But unfortunately, that's it for this devlog. I know it was a bit strange because there were 2 sections and a lot of it was just me talking about my vision for what I want multiplayer to be like. But now that that's out of the way, the next devlog should be pretty much back to normal. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching and peace.